Is my 19F relationship with my wife, 21F, worth saving? Looking for any advice on this situation. I'm finding myself at a loss, so anything is appreciated. This post will be a bit longer. Just as a heads up, to properly explain everything, I feel as though I should start from the start. I met my wife when I was 17, and she was 19. We were online friends. She stumbled upon me in a server for a show we both like, and we became friends. She had just gotten out of a long-term relationship with someone she grew up with. She wasn't looking for anything, and made that clear. However, I found myself growing to like her as we became closer. We would text all night and call throughout the day. There was barely a moment when we weren't talking to each other in some shape or form. I'm not sure what it was, but I found myself completely enamored by her. She flirted with me throughout this entire time, which she now claims is something she does to friends, and I fell for it, assuming that she felt something back for me. This quickly devolved into a situationship sort of situation in which she said she wasn't ready for a relationship, but had decided that when she was ready, she wanted it to be me. After a few months of back and forth, she decided together with me, and we were doing long distance. This all sounds embarrassing, and trust me, I know. I didn't know any better. This was my first serious relationship. Our relationship was rocky from the start, and it only got worse from there. She was extremely controlling, somehow, even though we were long distance, and would berate me and make me extremely anxious if I was out with friends. She would start arguments over anything, and constantly tried to leave me. I have very bad abandonment issues, mental health problems, and anxious attachment from things I've been through in my life. So I stayed throughout all of this, until it began affecting my physical health. I would be nauseous and sick to my stomach constantly about if she would be angry, and whether I would have to beg and cry while being berated with insults. I decided to give her an ultimatum. Change, or I'm leaving you. I probably should have left at this point anyways. Like I said, I was young and naive. I thought that when you're in love, you're supposed to stay no matter what. She actually showed some change from there on out. I will admit at this point I was not the best partner. I grew up in a very sheltered family, and some of her morals and takes on things shocked me, and the way I reacted to things likely caused her to feel as though I didn't like her as a person. After a momentary break in the toxicity and arguing, it ensued again. Some more insight here is that her and I were polyamorous. Initially I was iffy on this, but agreed after a bit of discussion and back and forth about it. She has now told me that I was an extremely jealous person, which I can agree with, and made her feel as though she had to walk on eggshells with me. This came into play as a year into our relationship, she found a person and began talking to them. Albeit being jealous, I would normally be okay with this, even if not enthusiastic. But this began on our 1-year anniversary. We were flying back and forth to see each other at this point, but were unable to see each other in person for our anniversary due to work and such. So we planned on FaceTiming and ordering food while watching a movie together. She instead spent the entire day texting said person and being extremely distracted when I attempted to talk to her. This began a month-long argument where we almost broke up several times, as she neglected me and accused me of being unfit for polyamory and being controlling. She only stopped this behavior after the person left her, and then apologized a couple weeks later. Our whole relationship was very cyclic. We have a very rough patch. I beg and try to pick up the pieces as she tries to leave. She finally decides to stay. We're happy. Rinse and repeat. At this point, I began to feel very disconnected from our relationship. I didn't mention anything for fear that it would start an argument. Months later, we decide that long distance is part of the issue in our relationship, and she moves to me. At this point, I'm trying to work through the many emotions I've felt over the past year and a half. I live in another country, and I work to support both of us while she has a visitor's visa. No big deal. I had offered to do this. Things begin to get better in our relationship, and it feels as though we're equal for once. Months go by, we get engaged, and get married. I'll admit we moved very fast in this relationship, but we're lesbians, what can you expect? LOL. I'm happy for once. This only lasts for a short time again. This time, she falls ill. Sudden chronic pain, and a multitude of other symptoms leave her bedridden. I'm still working, and all the housework and cooking is left to me. She deals with finances and our shared bank account. My job is awful, and this makes me grow bitter. I didn't have much time with my friends throughout our whole relationship, losing many connections as a result. The few friends I did have, I didn't have time for, and she would be upset when I went out. Not angry, just mildly annoyed. I'll admit I didn't have the best planning skills and would stay out longer than I had planned. My life starts to feel like Groundhog Day. Wake up, cook, clean, go to work, come home, cook, shower, sleep. Over and over. I didn't mind too much at first. I enjoyed the time I had with her. After a while, though, it felt like I grew resentful. I was tired. I struggle with depression deeply, and this only threw me into the deep end further. This definitely came out as me resenting her for being sick, because she couldn't help me. In reality, I was just stressed. I was quick to anger, upset every time I get home, and would start fights about any and everything. I feel awful for this. She would beg me to change, but I was convinced for some reason that I was right in how I was feeling, and that somehow it was her fault. I would continue on, try to be better, but the anger would catch up faster. I would yell constantly, and was genuinely just a miserable person to be around. Another thing that happened in this time is that her ex came back, the one she was with before me. She took it upon herself to be friends with him, and I expressed distaste for it, but decided it wasn't worth an argument. She eventually introduced me to him, and we became a sort of friend group. This quickly evolved into both her and I catching feelings for him. He admitted eventually that he returned the same emotions for us. We decided to get in a throuple sort of situation. This was dumb of me, also. I'll admit, I was extremely jealous. I would accuse them of loving each other more constantly, and began hating coming home each night. They shared interests I wasn't involved in and no interest being involved in, but they decided to talk about them in front of me constantly. I would get upset. My wife would tell me that it was the only thing keeping her out of a bad depression due to her pain. I would have to deal with it and move on. She finally had enough, about 2 weeks ago. She said that she didn't want to be with me for the time being and would move in with him while I figure myself out. I agreed initially. I'm ill-tempered and cannot regulate my emotions very well. Fights would turn into screaming matches very quickly. I don't want to justify my behavior, but I feel as though I felt I had to yell to be heard. It didn't work, of course. I find out a week into the break situation that they both have decided that they love each other more, and in a different way than they could ever love me. She says this could be because of the way I've treated her. Like I've said multiple times, I wasn't the best partner. My friends and family do not like her, and I would not defend her when they talk about her past actions and such, because what am I supposed to say if they're true? She tells me that her boyfriend, my ex, is much nicer and defends her no matter what, that he cares about her more. I've tried my best with her. Truly. Even now, I want to try harder. I've put my life on hold to help take care of her. I started working instead of pursuing my degree right away so that I could move her here. I'm mentally unwell, and she knew this getting with me. Yet she complains about me being unable to keep up with cleaning, cooking, and everything else. I want to work and get better, in hopes of winning her back. But I can't help but wonder if it's even worth it anymore. I feel awful. It feels like I'm nothing to her because someone else can do everything so much better than I can. I love her more than anything. She was the first person in my life I actually felt like myself with. Our values align and we have the same wants for the future, but I can't seem to meet her needs, and it feels like she just wants to be catered to without having to sacrifice anything or put effort in. If you've read to here, thank you. I truly appreciate it. I know it's probably tempting to make fun of me for this whole situation and my stupid choices, but please refrain. I could really use some advice from anyone willing.